So we have learned that there is nothing that has to happen and nothing must take place before the rapture of the church. If you believe in that sort of thing, right? And many don't. I do, and I believe it is a pre-tribulation rapture. So let's get that right out in the open. Nothing has to happen before the rapture. It is quite literally could happen any moment at any time. And we're to look up, especially as we see all these things happening. So I've posted a video on what must happen before the rapture, which means zilch, nada, nothing has to happen before the rapture. I just posted um, what we are seeing before the rapture and then what we may see. Now I'm going to put a qualifier to it because right now things are happening so quickly, so absolutely quickly that you almost can't keep up. When I post a video, at least in the technology that I'm using, it takes a while to not only record the video, but to edit the video and then to upload the video. So I did it in two parts, and already it's almost as if the second part, I was about to say irrelevant. It's not irrelevant. It's just simply outdated already. Now, what has happened that we need to be paying close attention to? I call it another convergence of events. I did a video a few weeks ago on labor pains and contractions and labor pains, and that we had started that final labor. I believe we started that final labor on that weekend, that incredible weekend in which the earthquake in Turkey and Syria took place. Well, it appears that the second contraction has also begun, and that happened even while I was recording those two parts. So what happened last week, which to me has become so important that I need to share this video? Well, first of all, we had the International Atomic Energy Agency coming out and saying that it would be an illegal act for Israel to attack Iran for their nuclear facilities or because of their nuclear progress, when in all reality, they had already enriched up to 90% the uranium that they had, and that is well within the parameters of developing a nuclear weapon. But since they'd done that and they'd reached that achievement, they added, this is what the Iranians did, they added some less processed uranium to lower the percentage um, of quality, if you will, of that uranium. So it made it look like, oh, we're not actually trying to get a bomb. They fooled the International Atomic Energy Agency, or they're in bed with the International Atomic Energy Agency and playing innocent. We know they're not innocent. Biblically, they're not innocent. Biblically, we know what they will do eventually when they are part of the Ezekiel 38 Gog of Magog and the hordes that are with him that will descend upon Israel and attack. Okay, so that all happened at the beginning of last week. It progressed even further because you had a moment in which China stepped in and pledged to bring Iran and Saudi Arabia together and normalize their relationship, which has been divided for over 8 years. This in the middle of negotiations that are taking place between Israel and Saudi Arabia for Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords. Wow. And China steps in, and they, in a day, Xi Jinping steps in and brings about the normalization of relationship between Israel and Iran. That to me was absolutely massive. Why? Because of the development of what is called BRICS. Now, there are other videos out there that you can watch. Ty Green has a couple of videos out and has recently, over the last few hours and over the last few months, videos on BRICS. BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and the S stands for South Africa. Originally it was BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And they had formed a European Union style manufacturing and trade organization that would be based upon the same currency. The idea is to remove the dollar as the world trade currency and develop their own, which would eventually become a digital currency with their own centralized digital currency and the banks that would be producing them. Then South Africa joined, and now Iran has joined and are part of that pact, and they are enticing Saudi Arabia to join and become part of BRICS, including several other nations on the Saudi Peninsula, number one, and number two in South America with Chile. So you have Brazil, and soon Chile and other nations will follow suit to become part of BRICS. They're forming their own economic partnership, their own economic power, and it appears that this economic power, Germany is also, according to Ty Green, Germany is also applying for membership into BRICS. So you add all of these nations, and it really adds up to 13 nations that will form, could form, and are on the 7 continents, could form the beast as it is rising. Now that happened last Thursday, if my numbers are right, and I could be wrong, and some of you are researchers, you can research it out, but it happened last week. It was soon after that the first word came of the demise of the Silicon Valley Bank. This massive takeover of that bank by the federal government, because it could not guarantee its depositors of the funds being available. The reason for that is very simple. Interest rates have been rising. The Silicon Valley Bank and all other banks base all of their financial foundation on buying and purchasing government bonds, supposedly guaranteed by the government. So it's got to be the most stable thing. Remember, it's a fiat currency. Remember, it's an unbacked currency. The dollar is simply paper only. And yet the appearance is there of stability. But here's what happens when interest rates rise, the value of the bond drops. As long as the interest rate is low, the bond value is higher. And the Federal Reserve has been raising interest rates. So what had been down to nearly zero just a couple of years ago is suddenly up to 7.5, and they were talking about raising them even higher to stem inflation. Inflation is happening because they're printing money. They're just printing money, and they're throwing money all over the place, throwing money by the hundreds of billions at Ukraine, which I think is a scam all the way around. But they're doing all of this, printing money. Inflation is rising, so the Federal Reserve raises interest rates. They've raised it up to over 7.5%, I believe it is. And immediately all of those bonds that have been the foundation for these major investing banks, Silicon Valley Bank was a bank of investors, mostly over $250,000, which is the cutoff rate for insurance by the FDIC. These are small businesses and large businesses, all based on the futures market and technology for the most part, and throw in a little bit of wokeism and the global climate change push for new forms of energy. This was the basis of the Silicon Valley Bank, and it's all crashed. It's gone. The government had to come in and take over that bank. They've said that they're going to insure those investors of even above $250,000, but how they're going to do it, I do not know. They're going to have to print more money. Then yesterday, what's the name of the bank? Singular Bank. I believe it's called Singular Bank. On the East Coast, had to be taken over by regulators because they also found that they had lost their foundation. They could not They did not have the funds on hand to ensure depositors that they could take their money out. And there was a run on the banks already beginning to happen. So all of this taking place as BRICS is forming, and the crash of the American hegemony, if you can say it this way, the hegemony of its economy over the rest of the world is beginning to be taken away. Many of us have talked about and believe that America forms the new city Babylon. It's reflecting Mystery Babylon in its worship of false gods, it's false religions, it's pornography, it's pharmakia being exported around the world, and that God is going to judge the city Babylon, and it will be at the start of the tribulation, that it will actually form one of the heads of the beast being wounded with a deadly wound and yet healed by the beast as the beast rises. It's really kind of an interesting thing that happens in Revelation chapter 13, that the United States will be judged. Well, whether that judgment is, as some believe, a nuclear exchange of some sort that removes the United States as a power once and for all, or an economic crash, or a combination of both, we do not know. But what we do see is this last week, and over the last week and a half, up to even today, we see the dominoes beginning to fall for the removal of Babylon. I thought that would be very interesting to you to understand that what we are seeing and what we may see are happening in tandem. So what could happen is actually happening. It tells us that we can see with our own eyes the rising of the beast. It tells us that time is quickly coming to an end. You have that. You also have the understanding that Nisan 1 is about 10 days away, the start of the new year, the start of the biblical new year is about 10 days away. And many believe that the prophetic events that are happening come to a culmination at the start of the next Shemitah, which will happen Nisan 1, roughly March 23rd into March 24th. What if we go beyond that? You know, it's not a moment of panic for us. It's just simply saying all of the figures, all of the events, all of the happenings are lining up to tell us something big is about to happen. I personally hope that part of that something big is the snatching away, the catching away, the rescue, the deliverance, the harpazo, the rapture of the church. Okay? Look up, my friends. Look up. These are wild and crazy days. Those wild and crazy days are causing us to detach ourselves from this earth and the things of this earth and look to our eternal home, because Jesus is coming soon. So be encouraged. Be encouraged with those words.